Writing is my favorite thing to do.
Have you heard about the Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention? They'll have writing workshops, writing classes, and more. June 16th through 18th, 2017 at the Renaissance Airport Hotel in St. Louis, Missouri.
Cool! Where can I sign up?
Go right now to www.stlwritersguild.org and click on GatewayCon.
www.stlwritersguild.org and click on GatewayCon?
That's right. See you there.
Right Pack Radio, a podcast produced by Winding Trails Media for writers by writers.
Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack.
Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, author of Crazy Things, right now working on a space western to get that ready, out by September. Hopefully we'll have a sequel also by then, as well as a book on knife fighting. And with me today is my lovely co-host.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Kayenbay. I write paranormal romance under the pen name Kaseka and Vita, and under my own name you can find my story You Will Always Have Family, a triptych, on Nightmare Magazine's website.
Brian R. Cook, author of a bunch of stuff, actually. Mostly historical fantasy, some nonfiction. Check it all out at bradrcook.com or on the Writer's Lens or wherever else I am.
He's all over the place.
Hi everybody, my name is Chanel Etienne, and I write stuff that sometimes has to do with sci-fi and fantasy.
And sometimes not.
Sometimes not.
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator. My fantasy book Threadcaster is available on Amazon right now.
Yay! And at Main Street Books by now.
And at Main Street Books by now?
Yeah, this is April.
Okay, good. Hey, hello, April. If you would like to order it, you can order it from Amazon. And if you would like a signed copy, you can go to Main Street Books' website, and I'm selling signed copies through their location. So it's
that's Main Street Books
in St. Charles. So I don't know what their URL is, but Google it. I didn't come prepared.
MainStreet.net.
MainStreet.net.
No, MainStreetBooks.net.
MainStreetBooks.net. And if that's wrong, it's Brad's fault.
I'm Melanie Lucas. I haven't written any this week, so I'm kind of bummed about that. But I am writing fantasy and sci-fi.
And she also does nonfiction.
Yes.
And I am George Soroy. I'm an author, voiceover artist, and vice president of the Missouri Writers Guild. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Holiday Inn Executive Center in Columbia, Missouri, May 5th through the 7th for the Missouri Writers Guild's annual conference. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing you there. Just go to MissouriWritersGuild.org to sign up. Please sign up. We could always use more attendees there. There's a lot to offer. It's going to be a lot of fun. I am also an author of science fiction for the young adult reader. Both of my Excelsior books, Excelsior and Ever Upward, Part 2 in the Excelsior Journey, are coming from Aloris Publishing, May and June of 2017. The completed 5-part serial from Parts Unknown will be coming out later this year as well. And I am currently narrating the second book in Debbie Mamber-Kupfer's series of Pause, and with many more books on the way. So I look forward to hearing from you there.
And I'm kind of glad you brought up two things. One about the Missouri Writers Guild, which reminds me to mention GatewayCon, June 16th through 18th here in St. / Louis.
Sign up now.
Sign up now.
You can go to both.
Go to www.stlwritersguild.org/GatewayCon.html.
More importantly, there are reasons to go to both. Because
There
there's
are.
awesome programming that is going to be at the MWG conference, that it will not be at GatewayCon. And there will
And
be
vice versa.
GatewayCon programming that will not be at MWG.
And if you're a Missourian, then you probably live somewhere near one or the other and driving distance of the extra. So there you go.
To quote Rocky, that was discussed here, like a couple of few weeks ago, we fill gaps.
Yeah. So, and also too, so that's GatewayCon, if you haven't heard already, is a writers' conference and a readers' convention. Also, too, since you mentioned voice acting, my demo should be done by the time this is airing, knock on wood. So, finally, God.
Woohoo.
Still have a lot to do. But anyway, so, yeah, my infancy has started in the voiceover world.
Yes.
So today we're going to talk about my precious, my ultimate power control of the entire universe. No, I'm not. We're not going to talk about the one ring that rules them all, but we're going to talk about something called ring theory or ring writing.
That was some hook.
I know. I feel like I just tossed the ring right in the fire and waited for it to glow a little bit. But anyway,
What you just did. So puns aside, what exactly is this ring theory?
Yeah,
that you
who's
speak of?
confident to explain ring theory?
I believe that falls on me as the guy who was like, let's talk about ring theory.
Yeah, you do.
yeah.
that.
See,
Yeah.
before you start, Brad, I'm just going to say you're the expert in the room with a bunch of cabbage heads.
Good to know.
So we're all going to be going, okay, and now let us ask questions.
I'm about as much of an expert as our current administration and current government, so it's going to be fun.
Oh.
You're dating.
Okay,
us
so
now.
we have 7 cabbage heads, not just 6.
No,
so.
no. I do actually. Okay, so I do know a lot about ring theory. I've known about it before I read about it on this article that I'll quote to you guys later. I know about it because it is one of the most ancient storytelling forms that we know about. And as a history buff, finding out that there's this ancient storytelling technique that, you know, scribes and bards and everybody else used for generations, I was like, I must know this. And then I heard about it and I was like, oh, okay, cool. That was not the one ring to rule them all that I was hoping for. But it is interesting. So
in the darkness, confuse them.
exactly. In the darkness, confuse them. So here's let's jump into that darkness. So ring theory is exactly what it sounds like. It has to be a ring, thus a circle. So you start off telling a story, and you have a story arc that comes to a very definite midpoint. And then this midpoint, from this on, becomes a parallel of opposites to the story you just told to get you to that midpoint. And you come all the way back then to the beginning. Now, I know that you're all like, no, that sounds really confusing.
Yeah, everyone just clicked off.
Can we get an example? And I will tell you, Star Wars was written in ring theory.
Debatably.
No. There's a great rundown of how you can take it from, now it's just the 6. You can't, you have to leave with the 6.
I'm still putting the maybe
Can
on
I cut
there.
in for a second
Yes.
just to make sure I have this clear?
Yes.
So I looked up ring theory on the interwebs.
Yes.
And it took me to a wiki article on chiastic structure. And chiastic structure or chiastic pattern is a literary technique in narrative motifs and other textual passages. Sorry, I'm trying to read from wiki. An example of this structure would be 2 ideas, A and B, together with variants A1 and B1, being presented as A, B, B1, A1. So it's kind of symmetric, and you open things in one order and you close them in the exact opposite order.
Yes. The way that I've most heard described is ABC, CBA.
Yes, okay.
So
that's
you write
what-
ABC for the first half and CBA for the second half.
Okay.
Mirroring what you did, but then presenting it as its opposite. Or, like, okay, to break it down in Ring Theory of the Star Wars, which there is a great article by Mike Climo. It's called Star Wars Ring Theory.
It's on Nerdist.
Ring Theory, the hidden artistry of the Star Wars prequels. So, he takes a shot-by-shot comparison of the movies, showing you how they were written, thus starting with Phantom Menace, going to Attack of the Clones, then Revenge of the Sith, mirroring that then with A New Hope, coming back with The Empire Strikes Back, and ending with Return of the Jedi. Now, there is a shot-for-shot comparison where George Lucas has actually taken shots from one movie, flipped the elements, and that's the scene in a movie much later.
Okay.
So that is essentially ring theory. Now, what ring theory is really about, and where I really like ring theory, because that's too confusing to try and mirror it exactly like that, is that sense of starting a story and then bringing it back around to its full conclusion. If you read the Iron Horseman, or the Iron Chronicles, they are not fully written in ring theory, because I don't believe in the exact, necessarily parallel effects of ring theory. But it is very much written in the sense of where you started is where you end off. Things have changed. Yes.
So you're talking about storytelling structure that kind of brings things full circle.
Correct.
So
That can't. Okay, how is this different than a hero's journey, which is also a circle?
It's not.
It's
It's the same.
Well, now the ring theory
Or-
specifically would be taking that hero's journey from his beginnings,
Uh-huh.
then training up, becoming a great warrior, then aging out of that great warrior, becoming the master, who then ends up training the student, and the next generation begins again, and that's where you're getting ring theory out of that hero's journey.
I think Chanel, and then George, and then Kathleen.
Skip me, I think I'm going to sneeze.
Okay, George.
So basically, what you were saying was before you were saying that this theory would only apply to the 6, but it sounds like, in a way, it can also apply to the episodes that are coming after, with Luke Skywalker taking on that role.
Hopefully they do another ring.
Yeah.
And then they bring it right back around, and then we'd have this ring, and then you'd have this ring of the next arcs, which
is
would
that
be
a
very
Venn
cool.
diagram at that point?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
what it looked like when you did the hand motion.
Or the Olympics.
I like the Olympics better than the Venn diagram.
That's because you want another few sets of movies, which I wouldn't be opposed to.
Yes. But for me, it's about the storytelling arc.
Jen.
I have another, and I'm gonna say better example of
Go for
ring
it.
theory to give, because I don't really buy that Star Wars was written in a ring. Maybe accidentally. I've seen, some of the points that mirror it are vague enough that they could have been accident, and also I'll just go on record as saying I don't think George Lucas thought that far in advance. I don't think he
No,
thought
but
very-
I do believe as he made them, he mirrored what he had done.
His
Oh, well,
editor.
that's true, because the line is, it's like poetry, it rhymes. That's
a
George
direct quote.
Lucas, but I think that was more a case, and this is all I'm going to say about it, because I'm over here, I'm going to die a skeptic on him planning this as ring theory. Because I think he looked at his original trilogy, and he still had a lot of love for those movies, and he knows that they worked, and then he tried to do them again. I don't think that's ring theory. I think that's copying himself.
No, that's Force Awakens.
They copied
But
himself
he-
on that one because he had nothing to do with
He had nothing to
it.
do with that one.
But
Yeah,
that's
that
the
was
exact same thing, though. That they looked at what had came before, they looked what people liked about it, they looked at what they liked about it, and then they did it again. And that, that's fine. You can do that. I do that in almost every book I ever write. Is like, I like this trope, and this character type. Let's put it in this one too, because then I'll have fun, and people who like the last book will have fun. And Shameless, etc. I've only written one book. You can't guess what my trope is. But
My
example, my better example of ring theory that's a little bit more compartmentalized, so you don't have to think about 6 movies. Mad Max Fury Road is written in ring theory.
Yes.
We start off with Max on his own. He goes to Morton Joe's Citadel, and is captive. And then we escape. We go across the desert. We learn things. We learn things about ourselves. We form connections and families with Furiosa and wives and Nux. And we get to our destination. And then we have to go back. And we go back through every step, only it's changed slightly. Now instead of running away, we're running toward. Now instead of being pursued by a stronger, villainous creature, we're in a race with him to get back to the start. And we take all we've learned, and we apply that through character development to overcome, get back to the Citadel, and now we're in charge, and then Max is on his own again.
So they're
it's a
getting to the
complete
very
circle.
same arch, even, where they're cutting through that mountain pass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's a well done ring theory.
Yep.
Because it's an out and back. It's got that.
Literally?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
no, it is.
that's what I mean. Is that it's got a visual, locational representation of the ring it takes it in, And that sense of ring is what gives it that sense of completion.
Yes.
That we've done this journey, and even though we've come right back to where we started, we can see how much we've grown by going all the way around. And Max always has to leave on his own because it's a Mad Max movie.
Yes.
Mhm.
And he's
death.
He's the Bushido. He's the wandering samurai. He's gonna wander off and find another adventure because he doesn't belong anywhere. And it's, and also, like, just taking Max, I swear I'm not going to talk this entire episode about
That's fine.
Max.
No, it's a great example. It really is.
Max, just as himself as a character, like, we could take everybody in the movie in a ring. Like, you could watch them all go out and come back. With the exclusion of the ones we pick up when we're out in the desert. But, even then, I guess, sort of, because it's the whole idea of the green place and the mothers and everything. That's Furiosa's story. But Max's story in this movie, he starts off identityless. He doesn't tell anyone his name, he barely talks, but he's tattooed and given a serial number. He's just considered a universal donor. He's just a blood type. He's a thing. And then his out and back story is him becoming a person in the eyes of these people and in himself again, because he's been treated like an object. He's literally put on the front of this war vehicle as like a masthead, but as a figurehead on the front, and he's a thing, and this movie is just expertly written, and y'all should watch it if you haven't seen it already.
I'm appreciating it much more now.
Well, that plays into Nux's story
if you
because
break
Nux,
this down, there's some great breakdowns.
oh my goodness, it's wonderful. But by the time we go all the way out, Max has a chance to leave and decides to stay and help these people that he's grown attached to. And by the time we get back to the Citadel, he's told Furiosa his name, which he hasn't told her at all, because he doesn't want to be connected, because he's got this previous adventure that we get flashes in his PTSD. We see flashes of the family members and the loved ones that he had at his previous adventure that we didn't get to see, that are haunting him because he's a little bit crazy, because his name is Mad Max. So he's allowed himself to grow attached to these people, and then he has to leave them again. So that's another circle. It's like he had family, he left them under bad circumstances, he made new family, he left them on his own terms. This is him growing up. That kind of thing. Alright, there you go. Mad Max. Bam!
I definitely have to say that there is a very big reason why Mad Max Fury Road was nominated for Best Picture that year. It really is just a brilliant movie. I've only seen it once, but now you've just given me the inspiration to kind of go back and rewatch it, because I already thought that it was brilliant just watching it that first time around. But now, kind of taking that into consideration, I definitely want to kind of give it another shot and really kind of get in, really get into it. And I'm looking forward to watching it again.
Add to your love, all those car wrecks are real.
Yes.
They're all real, but some of them are enhanced through CGI, but they're all real.
But there is just to kind of ease back a little bit toward the Star Wars part of the conversation, I was very anxious to get into this little part of it while reading the article, because the main factor that plays against this whole theory is Lucas himself.
Yes.
Because one of the things that me being an absolute sucker for special features on any DVD, watching the special features on The Phantom Menace gives so much away when it comes to what Lucas did and did not plan to do, because one of the first things that they show in one of the little web featurettes that they have is him sitting down at his desk. He's writing out just the very beginning of episode 1 on a legal notepad, sits back and says, "Now all I need is a story." Now, does not sound like somebody who basically figured out how to come around and incorporate his backstory in a way that really
That just means
works.
he didn't decide to do ring theory then.
Right, but at the same time, this is something. But as you watched the whole trilogy, the whole prequel trilogy, which I do recommend, because I know that there are a lot of people that are against it. I happen to enjoy it, and I was really happy to see elements from the prequel trilogy in Rogue One. Just kind of puts everyone out there, just like, look, this is part of the whole saga. You just have to deal with it. Let's move on. But one of the things that you realize as you watch episodes 1, 2, and 3 is not an element of oh wow, it's all kind of coming back around in the ring. It's that you realize how little Lucas planned out this entire trilogy. Because episodes 1 and 2 should have been one movie,
Yes.
and episode 3 should have been 2 movies.
Yes.
If you show that element, if you show like this increasingly, just increasing slope of darkness, as the Empire grows and grows and grows, then you really have something there, because that's basically what you kind of see with A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back going into Return of the Jedi. You kind of see that kind of just drop in and of itself, the way that they are. But at the same time, the way that Revenge of the Sith was, the main thing about it was that there was so much that had to be done. And for some reason, a whole battle on Kashyyyk had to be inserted.
It's the same reason that the Ewoks were inserted.
Right.
They wanted to sell the playsets.
Pretty much, yeah.
They needed Chewie in there.
And just like to give them action, but if he had just put in the effort to really kind of plan it out a little bit more, I would definitely buy into this article a lot more.
Kathleen, and then Brad, and then.
Okay.
No,
Chanel's
sorry, I
back.
didn't see you were ready. Sorry.
Oh
I didn't
yeah.
know you were ready.
Waiting.
Oh.
Go on.
Go for it. You first.
So I have two. So I guess I'll come back again too.
You get to have a ring.
Oh
yes.
my gosh! So meta!
Wait, I unintentionally made a ring just like he did. Okay, sorry.
Just as unintentionally.
Oh,
So I
sorry,
guess-
George.
So I guess
We're
my
all
question
sorry.
is, does his intentionally writing it as ring actually impact the fact whether or not it is in ring format?
That's a good thought
I'm
question.
so glad you said that.
That's actually where I was going to.
That's also where I was
There we
going.
go.
I was gonna say,
Kathleen, and then Brad.
I first heard about chiastic structure from Mary Robinette Kowal when she gave a writing workshop here in St. Louis, and she basically described it as you open something and you close it in the reverse order of the order you opened it in. So like think of it as a parentheses, which I've said before in a Right Pack Radio episode. You have one parentheses. If you open another parentheses, then you then have to close the parentheses in the order you open them, otherwise the story doesn't make sense. And I think people are we're used to that kind of structure. It's been like Wiki has a breakdown of the Noah story in the Bible being in chiastic structure. So it's been around a while. We're used to it. We kind of think in it more or less instinctively by this point because so much of what we take in is in chiastic structure. So, back to Chanel's point. Did George Lucas intentionally use chiastic structure with his set of 6 movies? Does it really matter? Like, he could have picked up just enough from, a life in this world as everybody else. I don't necessarily think he did it on purpose, if he did it. I do think, though, that using chiastic structure is great, but it's not a crutch for lack of characterization, lack of good plotting, and lack of goodness or redeeming value in whatever it is you've written first 3 episodes of Star Wars.
Ring theory's not saving your butt.
It feels desperate to me. Like, no, you should like them, and here's this is why.
Okay. Real quick,
kiddo.
I know you're going to jump on this, so
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
free to keep jumping on it, but I would argue that George Lucas is not the one who ended up creating the ring theory of Star Wars.
I would agree.
So I would actually probably throw that into your editor or your cinematographer or the people who actually made the movie. And when I say that, I mean the guy who's actually laying out everything, because the guys who's laying out where the ship is going to be and how that shot is laid out, yes, starts off in the what do you call it? When you do the pre-art for the
Concepting.
not the concept art.
Storyboarding?
Storyboarding.
Yay!
Thank you.
That's why you were looking at Jen.
Yeah, come on, you should know better.
That's why I went to art. I went to art first. I'm like, concept art. Oh, storyboard, yeah.
But yeah, so storyboarding, that's where that gets laid out. So whoever was the storyboard artist is probably the guy who actually did the ring theory stuff. But the reality is that it's I don't necessarily think it was George doing it. I think Star Wars was done in ring theory in an end kind of thing. Is that, his wife who was doing the editing or something?
Well, she wasn't in the
Yeah.
prequels.
Exactly.
Good ones.
So, yeah.
All right. My turn. Cool.
Your turn.
The question that Chanel put forward was, does it matter? It matters if we're giving him credit for it.
Yes.
Which it sounds like as a group have decided that we are not.
We're giving Star Wars credit.
In which case, and I've done like minimal research in terms of Star Wars behind the scenes stuff because I'm limited only to what they package in articles and special features on DVDs. And I'm a little bit biased because I have mentioned before that I'm a huge fan of Red Letter Media, and they like to take the piss out of those movies, and I enjoy watching them do it. So,
Especially episode 1.
Oh my god! Oh, I have never laughed harder. That's a lie. I'm engaging hyperbole for comedy, like we did last episode. But I've never laughed harder than the not a human doesn't know how to understand women buzzer in the Attack of the Clones review on their site is hilarious. I love it. No, those reviews are not appropriate for children. If you're an adult, go watch them.
Oh yeah.
But the question was, does it matter? It does matter if we give him credit, but as analyzing ring theory, it makes Star Wars a great thing to discuss because we can look at it and try and fit it into ring theory from the Legos we've spread over the carpet. It's like we have all the parts.
I'm knocking it in with a hammer.
Yeah, it's like we have all the parts here. And we do have 2 arcs, so it could easily be like one half of a circle and the other half of a circle, created 25 years apart. And it's like, we can look at it and we can try and figure out what would make good ring theory by taking it to pieces. And that's what this article did that Brad discovered that he wanted to talk about ring theory with. They looked at all of the things we had in Star Wars because Star Wars has very obvious arcs. Like, they built really obvious arcs. And the one, the original trilogy, which I'm calling the first ones, even though they come afterwards in the timeline, it's so confusing. But the original trilogy has this arc of, and if we're just going to take this on Darth Vader, because we're just going to take this on Darth Vader's arcs. And Luke counts too, but we're going to take it on Darth Vader's arc. It's the story of a man who is evil who turns good over an arc, and it has to do with family and just self-discovery and being manipulated by power figures. And then the prequelogy is about a man who is light and turns dark for the same reasons. So you can follow that circle in a big loop. And I don't think that George Lucas has credit for that because the lines he wrote and the direction he gave his actors makes it look like he doesn't really know what he's really doing. But the story he was telling, he knew that he had to get Darth Vader into the suit because that's going to sell cereal and toys and costumes and things and action figures to little children. So we had to get him back in the suit. And if you notice when you were watching these things, when Revenge of the Sith came out, Darth Vader in the mask was on everything because we went absolutely apes for that nostalgic imagery, even though he's in the suit for one line. One hilarious line at the end of the movie.
Well, to be honest, a couple lines followed by
the funniest line ever written and performed.
What was the funniest line?
No!
But, okay, sidebar. Anyone else notice that the Emperor is smiling during that entire time?
He thinks it's hilarious.
And I'm thinking he's reaching out with the Force and killing Padme at that point. I think he's the one who killed
You
Padme.
think so?
Yeah.
That's a good theory.
It makes more sense than how they killed her.
Yeah, that's a classic theory.
Yeah, saying that basically, like, the fact that he was saying, like, it seems in your anger you killed her. Spoiler alert.
Yay!
We like the fact that he doesn't really, he would only know if he was reaching out and siphoning her life force,
right,
to save Anakin. That in itself gives it, some extra weight. However, the line itself is unforgivable.
Yeah. No, it's a treasure given to us on accident.
I have a question with this ring theory, but before I do, and with it being Star Wars, So before we do, Brad, you're waiting, so I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to ask this question.
Just real quick, I threw it out to kind of preserve a little bit of George Lucas's. Not that he needs it, but he's a technical director. He's never been a story director.
No, he's not an actor's director.
He's the reason why we have kick-ass visuals today.
Yes.
He's not the reason why we have great storytelling.
We recognize that as a strength.
Well, and
No, he's also
and not
an
only
idea man. He came up with some really good ideas,
exactly.
and then he got other people to come in and help him tailor them, and then he didn't.
Exactly.
not only do we recognize it, but he and his colleagues also recognize it. There is a wonderful feature on the THX 1138 disc that shows Francis Coppola saying that his own positives are dealing with actors and writing. You know, Coppola is saying that about himself.
Yeah.
Completely true.
Yeah.
And what Lucas's main positives are editing and cinematic conception.
Right.
And they work together in a way that is really interesting. It's probably why the big reason why American Graffiti was as strong as it was.
Well, there's a special feature in the Phantom Menace that shows him literally putting his scenes together in post.
Yeah.
That's where he's comfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why whenever he was making he made the first Star Wars because that was his shoestring, thing.
Yes.
And then when Empire Strikes Back came on, he was like, okay, I'm going to hire other people to do the stuff I don't like doing as much.
Yeah.
And then then the prequels were very much I want to take my thing back because the fans had taken the thing from him and it had reached its tendrils in the popular culture and he didn't feel like he had control over it anymore. So he made the prequels to sort of help himself feel better. That's my theory.
And it basically just made the original trilogy better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He had to go in post and add post-production stuff
Now,
because that's what he's strong in and he
Let's
likes.
just say that he and Spielberg kind of drank way too much of that wine or something that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were like, let's just screw with everything.
Yeah.
And that was a horrible time in Hollywood's life, and it needs to be buried and put away forever.
Yeah, and we can
Like the
talk about
Atari
Spielberg too.
Before I ask my question,
Slowly polluting the water supply.
before I ask my question, I am going to defend George Lucas briefly, along with this. Without him, we would not have had Star Wars. In fact, he has been compared, and I really hate this comparison because the gentleman he's compared to was an ugly man, wrote beautiful music, but an ugly man, and that is Richard Wagner.
I thought you were going to talk about Andrew Lloyd Webber.
No. No, Richard, the reason why I don't...
Sorry, that was a joke.
The reason I don't like comparing Lucas to him, while the comparison is real in the sense of what he created, Richard Wagner was a proto-Nazi, which is why I don't like the guy. But he did give us...
And why the Nazis really loved Wagner.
Yeah, but he did give us the Rheingold 4-part opera, which is Das Rheingold, Die Valkyrie, Siegfried, and Guten Dämmerung, which is the Damnation of the Gods. I'm sorry, I will call it what it properly translated. That's great opera, and that's what really George Lucas gave us as well. He gave us a whole brand new mythology, which absolutely is beautiful. But with this ring cycle, I have to, which also notice the connection there.
Did you bring it back around?
Yes, I did.
Oh.
I have to ask. Okay, so if
And we
the
heard the
movies,
halfway part.
Oh my god!
I did good. I really aimed this. If the
And he
theory,
didn't mean to do that, but at the same time he did it. So does that mean he gets a credit?
Exactly.
I think he
So,
deserves credit to finish
His
his
name
idea.
is Lucas.
there we go. And
fault of his
admittedly, and George, if you are listening, don't worry, I'm not coming to you for anything. But but the way he looks, he does look like he could be one of the uncles in my family. But anyway, so there might be a connection. I have no idea, nor do I care.
Yes, you do care. You just don't think there is
Skywalker
one.
Ranch to ask.
Yeah, that would be the only thing. That would be the only reason why I would care.
Like every
This
other
guy have a
Lucas
job at
was
Saddle on the Ranch. Anyway,
Yes,
or just
your,
an
your
office.
idea, David? What was your idea?
Anyway, my question. Okay, if ring theory actually was applied to Star Wars, the way it's described in the article, where does Clone Wars and where does Rebels fall into that? And as well as now we have Rogue One, which is the connection between the prequels and the original trilogy.
I wouldn't call it a connection so much. You need a couple more prequels to actually connect the two.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with that, but it's technically a connector. But yeah, I agree with that. Perfectly lined.
In which case, then, it would be A, B, C, D, C, B, A.
But where's Clone Wars fall into in Rebels?
Clone
That's not a
Wars.
film.
Yeah,
Well-
now you're trying to include everything
Yeah,
within canon.
that's
It's like you
No,
should
that's
ask
right.
Then it's gonna be like one big hula hoop.
Yeah, the way you would do this.
The Olympic rings.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Olympic rings of a mythology.
Well, ring theory I mean, we can have a lot of fun with it, but it's just a storytelling technique.
Mm-hmm.
And, as we've talked about it, it's a way of bringing your stories back around in a certain pattern and way and everything that goes along with those. And as Kathleen described, this isn't something you can use as a substitute for anything. You still
Right.
got to have great characters. You still have to have an awesome plot. You still have to have all of those things. It's just, as we structure our plots, there are different forms we can use.
Well,
we can use linear plot forms like I tend to use, where I have a linear arc, to my story. One follows the next. You can have very convoluted spider webs, where this is going to this happens, crossing over. These people screwed these people over. Okay, now we're going back in. You can do all kinds of different methods. Ring is just another one.
And I'm going to turn this over to Jen. You're next, but I'm going to say with this is just another, to borrow Stephen King's phrases, this is another tool in our toolbox of writing. It is not the only tool, and there's no one tool that's the most important. But if you've got to put a screw in, you don't want to have to use pliers. You want to use a screwdriver. A hammer will work. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, since we've been talking about Star Wars as this example or non-example or fringe example of ring theory, how about we just take a moment? I'm going to assume that Brad over there has the article open. Do you have the article open?
I do.
Could you just read, just real quick, Cliff Notes, how this justifies, how does the article say that justifies in ring theory? Like, what is the circle?
That's actually really difficult, because they do a shot-by-shot comparison of different movies.
Well, can you, give us
showing
sort
you
of
how to,
break it down movie to movie, the overview.
Real quick, to
important
answer
thing.
David's question, it's called Rings Within Rings, and it's actually the number 6 rule of writing in ring theory. Is that a large ring composition may in fact include smaller rings. Some rings emphasize the division of the two halves by making each half the ring. A large book often contains many smaller rings. They may come from different sources and times and authors, or one large ring can be composed entirely of minor rings stuck together in groups. The practice makes the ring form ideal for incorporating old material, such as the Bible is.
Is that on the Nerdist article, or is that a whole different article that you're reading?
This is that same Mike Climo.
Yeah, the Nerdist article.
Yeah.
That's on Nerdist site. Okay.
I don't think I'm pulling this one off the Nerdist, though.
Oh, what?
It is on the Nerdist, though.
Okay.
You can find it there.
Yeah, this is off Star Wars Ring Theory.
.com.
Yeah, StarWarsRingTheory.com.
Okay, I'll look for that.
But to answer Jen's question, give me 2 seconds, and there was.
So, how y'all doing?
Doing fine.
As we're all right now looking at our devices of intelligence.
They actually do a whole thing with Red Letter Media in the article too.
Go ahead, George.
I just want to say something just really quick while Brad is going through the article there. One thing that I really just have to give credit to pretty much everyone who is involved with the whole Star Wars saga is how malleable it has become. The one thing that we see, like in so many different trilogies or different series or whatever, is that you have to start here, you have to end here. What this saga has given us is many different options on where you can start watching this. You can either go in the order in which they were released. You can do 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. You can do what Lucas is insisting on people doing, which I think is incorrect, and I'm sure many other people do as well. But at the same time, if you are very much aware of the spoilers that happen in The Empire Strikes Back, you can go and watch episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and see how it goes. Yeah. You can do what I personally prefer, which is 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. To kind of give it that sort of feeling. The fact that
you never watched one?
Huh?
You never watched one?
Oh, I watched one. Yeah, I said one.
Where was one?
4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I
and then
missed
6.
one. Okay.
Yeah, and you can do that, and each one would work for you. So that's one thing I just want to kind of give credit to that whole saga for doing.
Well, that's because it's an example of good world building.
Yes.
That it's a fantasy with sci-fi elements. There's a lot of room for imagination.
Mm-hmm.
The rules are tight enough, and I'm not going to gripe. I swear about things.
Don't gripe. Don't gripe.
Okay.
The rules are tight enough that you know how to operate within the world, but they're loose enough that you can make up new stuff and have it still fit.
Yeah, and just also just keep in and also, I'm not saying that Lucas is the be all and end all and everything. This is the same man who needs to be reminded that Obi-Wan has to pick up Anakin's lightsaber so that he can give it to Luke later on.
Yeah.
He had to go in and film that as like an extra pickup.
He also didn't bother referencing whether the Republic stood for 1,000 years or 1,000 generations, which he got wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
And just an FYI, and I'm turning this over to Brad.
Yeah, Brad.
This is why you need a story Bible, especially if you're going to create something this big. So you're able to go back to it and see what actually is. If you don't know what Story Bible is, we do talk about it in a previous episode, but you can also Google it. Battlestar Galactica, the remake, has their own Story Bible out there for first season. It's a great reference. Go for it, Brad.
Okay, so this is about as close as I was going to come to answering your question without actually making you read the entire thing.
Okay, yeah, don't read the whole
This is
article.
going back to chiastic structure, though, which Kathleen brought up. So here's how it works. The story is organized into a sequence of elements that progress from a beginning to a well-marked midpoint. Then the ring turns and the first sequence of elements is repeated in reverse order until the story returns to the starting point. This means that the first and last elements correspond to each other, hence you start off with Luke staring off at the two suns, and we end off with Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen staring off at the two suns. So that gives you that kind of sense of how that's done. Now there are the 6 rules for ring composition. One is the exposition or prologue. There is generally an introductory section that states the theme and introduces the main character, maybe like a scrolling crawl, crawling up the screen. Something along those lines. Usually its tone is bland and somewhat enigmatic. It tells of a dilemma that has to be faced and a command to be obeyed or a doubt to be allayed. Above all, it is laid out so that to anticipate the mid-turn and the ending that will eventually respond to it. 2. Split into 2 halves. The ring competition must be split into 2 halves at the midpoint. If the end is going to join the beginning, the composition will at some point need to make a turn towards the start. The convention draws an imaginary line between the middle and the beginning, which divides the work into 2 halves, the first outgoing, the second returning.
Which, as Jen pointed out in Mad Max Fury Road, was literally going out and coming back.
Exactly. Number 3, parallel sections. The 2 halves of the ring must be arranged in parallel. According to Douglas, this is done by making separate sections that are placed opposite each other across a central dividing line, or one on each side of the ring. Each section on one side has to be matched by its corresponding pair on the other side. They show this by breaking down when ships land in, say, a hangar. You will then see in the corresponding movie a ship land in the hangar, but now the ship's on the other side of the screen. The entire screen's now been reversed.
This is when it gets down to the minutia that I think it's going too far.
And you might be.
You're
And this
reaching
is why I say,
too far.
and this is when I come in and I say I don't necessarily think George Lucas planned this out from the beginning. I do think as they were gearing up to make the second half, they were like, let's do this in, or at least somebody went, let's do this in ring theory.
Here's my response to that. I think they looked at the court. They said, "Okay, we're gonna make the second movie in this trilogy. Let's watch The Empire Strikes Back and steal a bunch of stuff."
And that might be.
And then the rest is accidental.
4. Indicators to mark individual sections. The individual sections of the ring composition must be clearly marked so the reader knows where each section starts and stops. I.e., they do this by breaking it up and having, the different arcs and stuff. Central loading, number 5. Whereas modern stories are usually presented in a clear, linear fashion with the climax occurring near the end, ring compositions tend to place the climax or central crisis of the narrative in the middle, with the parts preceding the middle moving towards it, and the parts following the middle moving away from it. One clue that the middle has been reached, says Douglas, who they are referencing his article in this article, is that it uses some of the same keywords clusters that were found in the exposition, as the ending also accords with the exposition. The mid-turn tends to be in coordinates with them both. Then the whole piece is densely interconnected. I'm going to stop there because no need to keep reading. Basically what he's saying is that you're going to reference some of the actual words or scenes, which is what they do in Star Wars. They're more doing the actual scene flipped than the actual story.
And before Kathleen goes, this is the same article you mentioned a moment ago, Ring Theory, Star Wars, or what?
Yeah.
Star Wars
Ring Theory.
Thank you.
That the last sentence of that says, in addition, the most important message of the work tends to be delivered at the turn or the center of the ring. Which again brings me back to Jen's Mad Max Fury Road. Max realized
I can't take credit for Mad Max Fury Road.
You brought up the point, so I'm giving it to you. He realized he was a person and that he kind of had a family, and that's why he decided to go back with them. So that's a pretty strong. It's pretty important. It's pretty important for his character. Like, his character arc had a huge point right there, and that's what, for him, was the climax. Everything else was kind of just writing that out.
And everyone else's story in that movie, they all hinge on that one moment. Like, everyone, this is why this movie is written, like, brilliantly, and up on the pedestal I place it, is everyone's story is tied to getting to the green place. They're going to where the plants are. And, you know, for the wives, the story's about freedom. For Furiosa, the story's about returning home. For Max, the story's about completing a goal so he can be free. For Nux, it's about discovering truth and breaking from his religious fanaticism, and finding individuality. His story and Max's story are pretty closely tied in different ways. But when you get to the green place and find out it's not green, that's everyone's story twists. It's Max realizing that he needs to still help these people, even though now he's finished his job and he can leave if he wants to. It's Furiosa realizing you can't go home again because there is no home to go back to. And it's the wives realizing that that better world out there that they were looking for, where they thought they were going to be free, doesn't exist and never did. And then everyone turns around and says, we have to go back to where we came from with this knowledge. And the knowledge is then that we're going to make what we went out there to find by changing the world we came from. Shoom, bam, right back to where we started. Wonderful.
By the way, there's a great breakdown on that movie as to the different people and how they relate to the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
With Max being death. And it is a brilliant breakdown and write-up of how they did that, and totally worked, in my opinion.
And to keep the whole tone and idea of this episode, that is extrapolation from a story that wasn't necessarily written into the script, but it's a script that's written so well, and Star Wars being an idea that is presented so well, that you can relate to it from different angles and adapt it to different things, like ring theory. Whether or not it was intended by the original scriptwriter, it matters only so much as you give credit to them, but however you want to understand the story that's in front of you, everyone brings their own perspective to it, and you can think about it in different ways, and that's fun. It's fun to do.
Okay, 6 was Ring Within Rings. I read about that one. We were talking about it, I read that. And then 7 is a closure at 2 levels. Finally, the ending of a ring composition must join up with the beginning and make clear closure on both a structural and thematic level. The exposition will have been designed to correspond to the ending. When it comes, the reader can recognize it as the ending that was anticipated in the exposition.
Just to add on to a little bit what Jen was talking about before, because her breakdown of Fury Road just now reminded me of the structure for the first Matrix movie. Because it's also very much in that same sort of sense, because you have Keanu Reeves as Mr. Anderson, who is spends the first half of the movie being, in a way, kind of like pulled out of the Matrix into the real world and everything, being taught how to manipulate it to his design. And then all of a sudden realizing that he has to go right back into it when the same man who had freed him is now a prisoner himself. So now all of a sudden he has to basically take what he had learned and go right back into it and everything. And then finally make that last once everything kind of connects and everything, like right at the very end when he's able to really kind of realize his full potential for that for that first movie. Not talking about the sequels,
Okay, good.
but which I still stand by. I have a lot of love for Reloaded and Revolutions, but just going as I see that look.
Well, okay, when I ring the bell, you two can come out of your corners. But okay.
Chanel, we can with you.
But,
now
yeah,
on
just-
the panel, we can add the Matrix trilogy into the Star Wars prequelogy and our list of things that we can bring up and gripe about every so often.
Yes.
Anyway.
Right.
But yeah, like that's like that particular movie really works as not only the hero's journey that it is, but also in that same form of ring theory where you basically just have to spend your life as a slave to this world and then basically just kind of come around and become the master and free the man who freed you at the same time.
Okay, I'll give you that.
I concede for now.
And in this corner, wing. So, bringing it full circle, do any of you, well, Brad, you've admitted to, that you use ring theory to a degree.
Very loosely.
Very
Like
loosely.
super, super loosely. In that my trilogy comes back on itself.
You
And
use the
I
ring.
tend to write.
You use the ring theory so much it's kind of a loopy.
No, it's a ring. It goes out and it comes back around. It's
Okay.
just there's no paralleling. You can't take scenes from Zulu and say, yeah, this is exactly like Horseman, or you can't take Zulu and go to Lotus and be like, oh yeah, that totally is the reason why that
Yeah.
is reversed there.
Actually,
Yeah, I didn't do any of that cool reversing thing.
actually, I was going to ask a question of, does anyone else in the room use ring theory? But you just made me think of a different question.
Yeah.
And that is, if me or our listeners wanted to use ring theory, do we have to write several books in that theory before we can ever release them for it to work out? Because it sounds like it's such a massive plot.
No.
No.
Max Fury
We
Road
just-
is one movie.
We just did we just did a
But
couple
no,
of
no,
examples.
but if you were using ring theory, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear, and that's my fault.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was to write a series and use it and create a ring theory, or create a ring, would I have to write the ring before I could release the first book in that?
Did George Lucas?
No.
Well, but George, we have spent the entire.
In fact, one
Almost
might argue
hour.
it's easier to do it if you don't plan it ahead of time. Because then you can actually, if you plan it ahead of time and stuff changes, now you've got to change the entire ring.
Right.
If you go off what you've published, then you're just going, damn, I got a deadline. Let's backtrack what I did in book one, and we'll just write that in reverse and call it a ring, and I'm a brilliant writer.
Okay.
And my deadline is not tomorrow night.
Before long, all you have is Pee Wee Herman, taking a header off of his bicycle, standing up and saying, "I meant to do that."
Yeah. That's 100% actual, like, for real.
Yeah.
A lot of, oh no, it was always brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
The ring theory comes from the fact that human beings like to have things completed. My version of ring theory is I like to put a bow on it. I like there to be a bow at the end of all of my stories. And there are some stories that work well without having all the little loose ends tied together at the end. Those ones tend to be the ones my sister likes more than I do. But I like to have everything sort of come to a logical conclusion and put a nice big pretty victorious bow on the top. Read Threadcaster, it's out now. But it's in that way, I like stories that have an element of ring theory to them. I like it when this concept that was given to us at the beginning comes through at the end, and we return to the ideas that we started and see how much we've changed. I like those things. So I put those in a lot of my stories. And I could probably, if you wanted to take Star Wars, if you wanted to take anything, if we had another 3 hours, I'll break Babylon 5 down for you in that way.
Oh, yes, please.
But
Babylon 5 ring theory?
You can put it in ring
Oh,
theory.
yeah, you could.
You can plug so many stories into ring theory because human beings like closure and patterns.
True.
Yes.
We love closure and patterns. It's the reason why our brains are wired to seek patterns and cause and effect. And here's my example. I don't remember who was responsible for this experiment, but I remember reading about it in AP Psychology. Just trying to teach explore the idea of the sentient mind trying to find patterns and trying to find reasons and causes and effects. They had 2 cages with a pigeon in them, and they trained the pigeon to hit a bar and release a food pellet.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other cage, the food pellets came out randomly, no matter what the pigeon did. They hit
Actually,
the bar,
they didn't come out randomly. They came out at a certain time interval, no matter what.
Well, whatever.
But
The point is that the pigeon spent so long trying to figure out what caused the pellet to come out that it was like hopping in circles on one leg or standing in a particular corner. It was doing everything it could to figure out what caused a food pellet to appear because it had learned that if you press the bar, food pellet comes out. So it was looking for a reason. And that's what human brains do too. We look for a reason. It's why you have conspiracy theories and so much, all this kind of stuff that we're looking for a reason for things to happen. And a lot of times there is a reason for things to happen, which is why our brains do that. We're looking for what caused the bad or good thing so we can either repeat it or prevent it. And that's ring theory in stories. It's like we're putting together stories in our brains so we want things to feel complete. And it feels very rewarding inside all of our chests and our readers' chests when we get to the end of the story, the end of the trilogy, the end of the series, the end of the movie, and we see all these things that we have internalized and figured out and understood then become important. So that's my take on the subject, is that ring theory, you can either get real complex with it like the Star Wars article did and look at individual scenes that are flipped over, or you could get more vague with it and look at your own story, and I bet you can find a ring in there, because that's human nature.
Yes, you can. Because I can sit here and probably tell you the different rings that are in the Iron Chronicles.
Uh-huh.
I can tell you exactly some of the rings that are in the Iron Chronicles, and I can tell you right now, I did not write them. I wrote them, very much like when I sat down to write the Iron Chronicles, I wrote a trilogy. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I was watching Scream 3, and apparently I've hit all of the trilogy tropes.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Everything you're supposed to have in the trilogy, bam. Like, he literally rolled it out, and I'm like, I did that. Really?
I'm glad you're smiling.
Yes, my supernatural bad guy did get bigger.
Uh-huh.
You could not easily just shoot my end bad guy.
This is not my final form.
Exactly. But, and that's how I wrote. Very much laid it out. So the first one is a ring in of itself. It starts in London, comes back to London. It starts with a certain sect and it comes back to that very same place. Did that very much on purpose. That I will take credit for that ring.
Yeah.
I wrote that one. However, as I'm writing book 3, I saw things that I was doing that were set up in book 1 that I did not necessarily set up intentionally, or some I did, knowing I was going to get to it later. Mm-hmm. But by then addressing that in book 3, that then becomes the ring arc.
And it's so rewarding.
Yeah, and now I literally had a ring in that my characters go around the world. Mm-hmm. So that allowed me then to have a bit of a, false ring, if you want to call it that, just because I do start in London and then take you all the way and end in London. Mm-hmm. So I do have those kinds of things, but I would most throw it out with some of the subplots that I have going on throughout all 3 novels, and the way those play out is almost done very much in Ring, that I laid it out, and that was not intentional. That was pretty much like we were getting ready for this episode, and I was thinking about my books and stuff, and it was like, oh wow, hey, that fits. That's cool, that fits. So yeah, and that's why I say that, and I think it goes to exactly what Jen was saying earlier in the sense of why we do this. It's because this is one of the oldest known storytelling forms. There's a reason why Noah and other stories within the Bible are written within a ring, ancient storytellers. This was a way of imparting knowledge. And for a lot of it, it was a way of knowing you had encapsulated the story. So you start the story, you tell the story, you get to a definite midpoint of that story, you come back, you bring all those lessons around, you bring them in, you end off right where you started off, and that lets everybody know that you told the whole story. It lets everybody know, because remember, we were all oral. We were telling everything oral. Everything had to be remembered. So it's a very interesting, I think that's where it comes from.
It feels finished.
It does.
It feels finished, and it's easy to remember. Is what
Easier to remember.
Sure. And now I've completely lost what I was going to say. Oh, no, I'm back. Okay.
She just wanted a ring.
No, that I was going to pull that into to fables and fairy tales. How many fables and fairy tales start off with, don't stray off the path, and then you stray off the path, and you get eaten by a wolf, and you get rescued, and you've learned not to stay off the path. You've learned to stay on the path, or else bad stuff happens, and you need to be rescued. That was teaching children to stay on the path and beware of wolves, and not get eaten, and trust woodcutters, I guess. But
Wow,
like
what big eyes you
we
have.
take those lessons. That was the reason why fables and fairy tales persisted and existed, is because you remember when Uncle Jerry ate those berries. You know what happened to him? Don't eat the berries. Like, that's the ring. That's the circle. That's the conclusion. We set this thing up, and this is also, Kathleen, you're addicted now to the setup and payoff rule of threes. Is you make the point, you look your audience in the eye, and you make the point so they remember it. Then you remind them of it, and then you pay it off, because that's what puts it in their brain. And that's what makes it feel closed and conclusive, which is what Brad just said. That's what makes a story, which is what writers do.
And on that note, I think we're going to end this. So have a great week writing. Tune in next week for yet another interesting adventure in the writing industry. Thank you for listening. And please share our episodes with your friends.
Read the article about Star Wars ring theory and go on Facebook and tell us if you buy it or not.
And on that, yep.
It's so long.
Did you know that Right Pack Radio has an international audience? How would you like to reach that audience in regards to your books, your book services, your author services, or more? Go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com and look under advertising for more information. If you don't have a script, that's not a problem. We will be happy to work with you. Once again, go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com for more information.
The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.